So let's install Snort under Linux, and we'll show you how to do that easily with aptitude and show you the configuration screen that pops up briefly so that we can set our home net definition or a home network and look at some of the locations of the configuration files and rules that are downloaded with Snort. First thing we want to do is to make sure that we've got an IP address that can reach the internet. And so in case you've set your Linux so that you're using a custom VM host only network, you're going to need to change this. Notice that I've got this here, host only, which means it can't reach the internet. So we're going to change that to NAT or something similar. Notice that I'm using Mint here. I do have several other Ubuntu's in a VM up here, but you'll notice that I've already installed Snort on them, so it's not going to do any good walking back through this. Notice that Network Manager automatically configures our networking in Mint. You know that it doesn't do that in Server, but it does do that in Ubuntu 10, 10.04, 10.10, and Mint. And so let's see, we should have network address translation working here, so we should be able to reach the internet. Let's clear this and let's update our repositories with sudo aptitude update. And we're downloading the most recent repository information. Takes a few seconds, and we got 152 updates. So let's go ahead and let's install Snort. Sudo aptitude install Snort. It asks us if we want to install all these files. Notice several of these files are related to MySQL right here. And then we've got Snort, the binary, along with some libraries associated with Snort, as well as some rules. The default community rules, as they're called, that we'll install. So notice that the default answer is capital Y, yes. Let's just hit enter. And then it'll take a minute or two to download the packages and install those. This is the easy way to do it. There are several other ways to do it, including downloading the source files and compiling those. It's asking us about our default NIC card, and notice here it's looking for ETH0 and I don't think you can find it. Let's go up in here and open a tab on the terminal. Let's type ifconfig. I believe it was ETH1 right here, and it doesn't really matter. Sometimes your kernel would set your Ethernet card to ETH0. In this case it set it to ETH1, and that's why I couldn't find it. Let's go back up in here to the configuration display and let's hit OK. Hit tab and OK. Interface which Snort should listen on, and we're going to change that to 1. Now I've already installed Snort, like I said, on all my other Ubuntu systems, and I never went through this interface. It was never asking me these questions right here because the interface was already set to ETH0, but in this case it couldn't find it, so it wants to know what interface we're going to use. That's ETH1. Hit tab to go down to OK. And typically if it finds ETH0, this is the screen with which you will be presented. And so it's asking about the definition for our home network, that is our internal network, what we're going to be listening on. And in this case, if you go back up here to this terminal, you'll see 192.168, 23.128. Let's go back over here. And the way this is set up, if we understand our CIDR notation, classless internet domain routing, that what this says is it only allow the last 16 bits to vary, which means that we would be listening on all IP addresses from 192.168.0.0 to 192.168.255.255. Well, this IP address falls within that range, so that's the correct IP address. If you've got something different, for example 10.0.0, if you've got a private class A or private class B network, you'll need yourself up differently, but in this case this is good for me. I hit tab, I hit OK, and so that did a little of the configuration for us. And Ubuntu and Mint make this really easy to set up. And it's back to this screen, which I've never seen before. Let's go ahead and click OK again. And it should be installed. And if you notice here, it says it was stopping the network intrusion detection system Snort. It says no running Snort instance found. That's correct because we didn't have it started before. And then it restarted it, or started it rather. Starting network intrusion detection Snort. OK. Well, I don't trust that. I want to see exactly whether it started or not. So PSAUX grep Snort. And we see the first line here. Snort. The PID, processor ID for this is 3180. And this is the command line that's run when we trigger Snort to run using the file under etc initd. We'll take a look at that in a moment. Notice it's calling user sbin snort, which is the binary. It's located in the directory user sbin. It's got various flags here that you can import. It one is -L var log snort. The -L stands for log, so this is where our snort logs will be written to. And the configuration file that's being read is -C etc snort snort.conf. Let's make this a little bigger so it's a little easier to read. No, it's not going to do it. Okay, so -S is defining our home net right here, which is how we previously defined the variable home net. And the interface is ETH1, so it's listening on the correct interface. Notice you see another line down here that contains PC running the PID 3193 grep-color A color auto snort, and that was just running PSAUX grep for snort. So obviously that was a process running, and it was captured when I ran it from the previous command line here. So we know Snort is running. So let's go look at some of those file locations. So let's first look at the Snort service and where that's located. Let's do an ls-al. Notice here Snort in the etc initd. This is where all our services are contained. So if we want to stop or restart that, we could type sudo etc initd snort stop to stop it from running, to start it to run, or if we want to restart it to reread the rules, we can type restart. Okay, let's go to the Snort directory, etc snort. Notice it's got several files in here, some of which I've explained previously in an earlier video. Here's our snort.conf file, which I explained in detail. And let's just take a look at that. Let's sudo vi snort. We're not going to change it, but let's go ahead and notice that all these hash marks right in here mean these are comments. And notice here the snort.conf defines homenet as any. However, that's overridden from our command line, which defines it as we saw previously. Notice that external net is any. So we could change that so that we could make this not 192.168.0.0.16. So anything that's not on our home network is in our external network. Oh, and in fact, that's listed right here. Let me go ahead and, this is actually an easier way to do this. I just noticed that it was written right here. Let's go ahead and let's comment that out. Let's uncomment this line. So essentially that means these two lines mean the same thing. Anything not on our home network, not the bang, the exclamation point, not on our home network. Consider that from the external network. Our home network is the trusted network. Our external network is the untrusted network. And notice there are other variables that you can change, including a list of DNS servers, SMTP servers, HTTP servers, and so on. Let's just leave that as it is right now, even though we're not running any. Notice it defines the port variable for HTTP ports as port 80. And I want to get down here to the rules. And here we go. So this is important because if your rules are contained elsewhere, you'll need to change this. But notice that it defines the rule path for the rules as etc snort rules. And we'll take a look at that in just a second. So that's good to go. And there's a lot of other things you can configure in here, but for this this assignment, you're good to go. You shouldn't have any problems running Snort. Ubuntu makes it so easy to do this. And we used to have to compile it and go in and change a lot of the information in snort.conf. It wasn't rocket science, but it was prone to human error. I guess you could imagine that. Okay, rules. So we're in the etc snort rules directory. Let's look at all the rules. These are the default rules that come with Snort. These are the free rules. If you want to pay for the most updated rules, you will have to pay a certain amount of money. I think it's a subscription service. But these are good for the assignment. So we have botnet rules, denial of service rules, exploit rules, FTP rules, rules for ICMP, IMAP, and so on. So there's a long list of rules that you can look at in here. And it's good to look at these rules and try to determine what they're trying to do. Our rules are there, and finally let's go and let's find our log files. Notice it's already got a tcpdump.log file here. This is going to be a binary file, which you would have to read, and it's empty, you see. But once you start capturing rules, once you start capturing packets, is that each of these will be written out to a TCP dump file, which is a binary file. And you can't just read that with less or VI or nano. You have to read it with either TCP dump or something that understands these binary files, which would include Wireshark. Notice that we have an alert file right here. Let's see. This is where all our alerts will be written to. And there shouldn't be anything in there. It doesn't have anything in there. Anytime a Snort rule alerts, it will be written out to that file. And so now let's try to generate a few alerts. I will start, let's start Ubuntu 64 over here. And what we'll do is we will do a scan of Mint 9. We'll have to make sure they're on the same network to do so. In fact, you should do this yourself. So that you can generate some rules. And let's open it up. Let's see if we're on the same. Okay, this is .23.129. Mint was .128, so we're on the same network. Let's go back over here to Mint 9. And what we want to do is that we want to tail the file so we can see it updating in real time. So notice here we've actually already got some alerts here. We've got, which was from .129, which was our Ubuntu system over here, 64-bit. Let's see if we've got Nmap installed. And we don't have it, so let's install that. And Nmap is a security scanner, and it's used by both system administrators and security enthusiasts and bad guys to map out a network. You want to type yes, since it's untrusted, but so we can install it with aptitude, or we could download the source code and we could compile it, which is very easy to do. I'll probably make a video of that later, because not everything comes prepackaged with Ubuntu. Now we can type Nmap, and that's not going to tell you a whole lot, but what we want to do is we want to generate some traffic to the IP address for Mint, and we want to map out its open ports, and this is going to cause Snort to go crazy. And so sudo nmap, and we want to give it we want to do something called a send scan, which is a half open scan, which we've discussed previously under packet capture analysis. And we're not going to list any ports, so what it does is, rather than listing, let's say if we wanted to list port 21, 23, and 80, it would only do a half open scan on those ports. But if we leave that off, what it's going to do is do ports 0 to 1023, all the reserve ports. And we want to see what type of operating system it's running, and so there's a way for Nmap to do that by looking at the stack, the network stack. So we're going to do a -O, which means tell me what the operating system is, or try to guess, and then we give it the IP address. I think that was 128.32. If we wanted to do a range of addresses, we could do 16, but we're not. We just want that one address, and that should work. And it's starting. Let's go back over here to Mint. Notice that it's saying it's being scanned. So the output says that it scanned all 1,000 ports and at .128, and they're all closed. And there are too many fingerprints that match this host to give specific OS details. It's not what I wanted. But the network distance is 1 hop. So let's go back over here and go to this terminal and make sure that okay, so we don't have a firewall up, and let's open up some ports. So let's install FTP on here and open SSH, and so we'll open a couple of ports. So we can install sudo aptitude install vsftpd and open SSH server. And then we'll take a look. So SSH is being started, and then let's do a netstat-tpan. And so we've now got FTP, and we've got SSH started. And so now let's go back over here and let's run Nmap one more time. And we're just going to do, let's go ahead and hit enter and do all those ports again. It'll take a little longer, but not long. And you see 998 closed ports. There were 2 open ports, FTP and SSH. And because we got a couple of open ports, it's being Nmap was able to determine it's running Linux 2.6 kernel from 0.17 revision to 0.28, 1 hop. So it was able to determine that we are indeed running Linux, and we do have those 2 ports that are open. Go back over to Mint and go back to Snort. And you see that we've got this TCP window scale option with length 14. Here's where that Nmap is trying to determine the operating system, so it's sending some special information over here and trying to determine what operating system is running, and Snort flagged that, and it found out that they were running a Nmap scan Nmap. It says Christmas tree. It's interesting because I actually ran a half open scan. So that shows you how to install Snort using Aptitude, how to configure your home.net variable. Got to make sure that that's correct, otherwise Snort will not be able to perform its job appropriately, and how to install Nmap for Network Mapper, which is a administrator tool that allows you to determine whether a host is up and what ports are running on it. And so that will give you some updates in here so that you can see how the alert file is updated on a continual basis.